ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back on the Real Boxing Talk. We are having some connection problems with our guest today, our supposed guest today, Ivan Robbins. So we'll connect with him at another time. So unfortunately, you're stuck talking with us, or actually talking. You're listening to us. You have nothing to say. Sorry about that. Okay. We've had a couple things happen in the last weekend that were, as we mentioned before, we had Triple G and we had Canelo not fighting each other, but still fighting on the same weekend. So let's start with the Triple G fight. John, what did you think of Triple G coming back and what he actually accomplished?
Well, everybody's a critic, but I was impressed only because, let me explain, because when I said that, someone went, what? Because of who he was fighting and everything.
Right.
Because his last two fights, he looked sluggish. He looked older. He's still old, but this fight he looked sharper, and that goes, maybe, I said to somebody online, maybe he really was kind of ill in his previous fight, but he wasn't ill when he fought Stevie Rolls, and he did not look good until he caught him. So here he looked good. He always gets hit occasionally. Somebody said he gets hit too much. He even moved his head more, and that's honestly from Jonathan Banks, no doubt about it. He went like this a few times. I was like, wow. So, and he's never going to lose the power, because we know the old cliche, that's the last thing that goes. So I thought he looked good. I won't say what I hate that everybody says. I won't say it. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say that fight. Nope. Not going to say it. He did well. I think he looked thrilled afterwards. I think because he thought in his own mind that I'm sending a message to Canelo. Look, I'm going to be a better version of myself, or I'm going to be the best I can be. If we fight, I'll be 39 then. That's what but he's like, I got a shot. Well, yeah, you got a shot, but we can talk about that later. But the answer to the question is, Frank, he looks sharp. He beat the guy down like he did when he was in his prime. And he just looked like a very, because, okay, real fast. So someone says, I never considered Triple G great, even when he was demolishing people. No, because his resume was kind of weak. I never thought of him as a great. I don't use the term great. It's overused. I always said he was a good, solid fighter, and he was matched correctly. He was knocking out guys very impressively, 23 in a row. So he's good. You might even say in his prime he was very good. Maybe. He's still pretty good. Still beat a lot of guys. But talk of him and Charlo and everything, that's another thing.
We'll get into that at another time.
So he looked good. I'll just leave it at that. He looked
good. Okay. And on the other end, we've got Canelo. It's the first time we've seen. How long has it been since we've seen Canelo, Charles?
It's been a year and some change.
Year and almost. Was it almost 2?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's been about a year.
Been a year. Okay. So ring rust, all those things we always talk about. What do you think, Charles?
No, I think he was. He came in with a plan. Canelo was ready. He looked sharp. In his plan, he executed it well. What we found out was all of the hype about Mr. Smith, about having punching power and knockout power, which not to say that he does not, right? But when you saw the fight, you're like, is this who they're talking about? Is this the guy they're talking about? Because he was big, he was slow, he was methodical. He was almost robotic in a way. It's almost one of those things where when you look at the Star Wars movies, you see that real big machine and it's coming forward. It doesn't really move a lot. It just goes directly. Now, if you get into its way, it will destroy you. But if you're smart, you dip in and out in regards to like CP30 or something, kind of, bobbing and moving, you can get it. And he literally walked down this gentleman. And after he beat him, the first couple of times, and he went like, all right, that's a wrap.
I'm sorry. I'm picturing Callum Smith getting beat up by an Ewok. I mean,
right. But I mean, when you look at it, you just kind of saw him. You saw him punching. It was
right. No, I know exactly what you mean. It's just
it just didn't have any style to it, and it's like the guy was. I mean, literally, it almost seems as if Canelo was very comfortable. He really didn't think he was in trouble. He waited and almost like literally said, "I'm going to slowly get closer, and now I want to go in for the kill, and there's nothing he can do about it." And that's what it looked like. It was almost like it was a stage play. Like, okay, I'm going in here. I have a plan, and he used it. He used it well, and he was able to put the plan forward. And there's nothing that the guy could do. It just got worse as it got later. And I think he wanted to stop him, but I will give Callum Smith credit for staying up and hanging in. I think his corner a couple of times wanted to literally end it because they thought he was taking too much punishment. And he said, no, I'm going to still stand up and fight. Right. But, I mean, Canelo literally, when you look at it from a Canelo standpoint, the strategy was like, it was brilliant, great fight for him. He took another big guy down, but then it just made you, from a casual fan going, is that the best? Is that the best guy you can find? and the dude was undefeated, so you can take anything from it. He was a champion, and if he's a champion, and
right,
you can get a belt and you're a champion, that's what you do. But he did everything he could do. But the other people from the outside were looking like,
Well, guys, we talk a lot about the eye test, and we were talking about this off air. What exactly are you looking for when you're talking the eye test? John, when you're looking at it, you're going, I see this guy might match up with this guy, or this guy has that. Are we looking at speed, power, ranginess? Because sometimes we can see that this isn't a good match, and they're not even in the same country fighting. What are we looking at? What are the guys?
Well, let me say this about Callum Smith real quick, too. You see, he earned this a lot because he won the Super Series, the super middleweight series, and the way he knocked out George Groves. He really didn't look like that guy against Canelo. I don't know what happened. Charles was talking Star Wars. I was thinking funny things like, too. I was thinking that line from Rocky II. Come on, you're too slow, man. You're too slow, And then I'm thinking, he looked like a basketball player out there, too. And I'm thinking, remember we used to say, give me the ball. I can take him. He's too slow. I can take it. So he just, I don't know. Speaking to your question, he seemed to pass the eye test when he knocked out George Groves. It was very impressive. Now, George Groves had only lost to Carl Froch once, very controversially, and a second time, very definitively. So he's a good fighter. He's making his fourth defense. He's good. But that Callum Smith, I don't know if he was a little intimidated. He just didn't seem comfortable. Just going back to what Charles said. Canelo looked very comfortable in there. Canelo was giving it the old, is this all he's got? Okay, that's all he's got. I'm just going to walk in and start pounding on him. But something, I don't really know. So back to your eye test. Maybe we were wrong, or because I thought it would be a tougher fight. I thought Smith would be competitive for the early going 3 or 4 rounds, and then Canelo would stop him later, win an easy decision. Not that easy. So it appeared that but the thing that can happen, it's a complicated question, Frank, because you can get what's the term I'm looking for? Not necessarily brainwashed, but you can be. You can see something when a fighter is fighting one guy and think he's better than he really is. And you can forget that boxing is really about styles and levels. So you go, wow, this guy's 18-0 with 18 knockouts. And then they put him in with a guy who's going to fight back a little bit. And you're like, maybe I was a little wrong about it, and then limitations come out. So the eye test can sometimes be premature. You can think that somebody's something and they're not. Sometimes, though, you can see a guy and go, he's it, and you're right. And I'll just say the guy that pops into my brain, because he's going to be a guy that he's not losing to anybody, I don't think, is Shakur Stevenson. I saw him in his 4th fight, and I went, oh, wow. He just keeps getting better and better. So it can be tricky sometimes, Frank, but most of the time, there's a lot more to it than, he looks good, because you got to consider all the other intangibles. But sometimes like Tyson when he was young, when he was knocking everybody out. Now you were still going, well, wait until he fights somebody who fights back. And then he did, he knock him out too. Or then he'd always win, even if he had to go the distance, like against Quick Tillis or whatever. So he passed it. But
Right.
That's the thing about boxing. You never know quite until you get in there. Like that guy Berlanga was talking about, 16-0 with 16 knockouts. He's talking about fighting Canelo
Right.
already. No. Let him fight somebody a little. Then we'll find out about him. So he looks like the guy because he's got all that power. Wait till he fights a guy who's tricky and Charles's word, clever, and knows how to get away from his punches and pops him when he's not looking. Then you find out.
Well, okay, Charles. So as we're talking about, and we always come back to the welterweights and that 2 or 3 weight classes, and we're talking about, and we continue to talk about, are we going to see Spence Crawford? And we were talking about this a little bit off the air. And when Errol Spence says he hasn't fought anybody in this weight class to put him into that category of the must-see fighter or the must-fight fighter,
Mhm.
when we're looking at the eye test as opposed to maybe Errol Spence, what do you think he's seeing that we don't see? Because we in general, I believe the general public believes that Terrence Crawford is the next welterweight challenger or the next welterweight unified champion. What is it that Errol Spence is seeing going, Bud, you got to show me something?
Well, I'll just say this, and I mean everybody has their own opinion, but I think that that Errol Spence is looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, yeah, you cleared out 140, right? The 140 division, you did that. But the difference between 140 and 147. And granted, it does not take away from the eye test or the skill set of Bud Crawford. When you look at the way he throws his hands, and legitimately when he fought Kell Brook, a bigger guy, he went in there and he handled him. So it's not to take away from him at all or anything that he's doing. But then to say, okay, all of a sudden, yeah, everybody wants to see that fight. Let's see the fight. And from the perspective of Spence, he's thinking like, well, you know what I had to do to get to this point, right? I was chasing everybody. I was chasing Thurman
Right.
when he had it. I was chasing.
Why should you get that easy?
Right. And I went there, and then you say whatever. I fought the people, and nobody really wanted to fight Sean Porter. Thurman he fought him, but reluctantly because he kind of backed him up a little bit. Danny Garcia called out Spence. But I think it really comes down to to get back to your question, is Crawford has been dominant at 140, dominant lower than that. And now all of a sudden at 147, he beats Kell Brook, and it's like, I'm ready. Put me in, coach. And I think Spence is like, dude, right now, I mean, I'll fight you, but are you worthy just yet? Are you worthy? And that's by a matter of opinion. I mean, boxers do it all the time. He's in Canelo doing it now. He's choosing who he wants to. But if I'm Spence, I'm like, I think I think a lot of people were surprised that Spence fought Porter, and he really didn't have to. He fought him because he thought it was the best fight. So now I think his attitude is, yeah, I'll fight you, but the money has to be right, which comes into the promoter as well. But he's like,
right,
show me something else. Show me something else. Why don't you fight Porter? Since you say you ready for me? That's probably my most difficult fight to date, right? Maybe unless you look at some others. But since you say you're ready and you want to fight me, I know what Porter is. And before it was just, and I get out this real quick. Before it was just talk, right? You just say, throwing names out there. But now that he's a mandatory for one of his belts, even Porter is like, hell, that's a belt.
right.
Before it was like, well, that's my guy. I love him, and we have Christmas together. We eat, drink hot chocolate together, all the other crap. But now it's like, it's money involved, and there's a belt, and I'm your mandatory now. So it's like, let's throw that out the window and let's fight. So I think that's the difference. And from, people might say Spencer should just go ahead and get over with, and we want to see the fight as fans and even as analysts or whatever. But at the same time, Spencer's like, I'm not in a hurry, man. I just came off this wreck and whatever. I just want to kind of chill. I got time. You're in a hurry because you're getting older and you still have a lot you want to accomplish. So I see it from both ways, both sides, but I really see it from Spencer's side because when you're the man, you call the shots. And he is the man, despite what people may say or what they may believe. Right now, at 147, he is the man.
Is it almost, John? Is it almost like, and I can say the same thing with Canelo, since we're going to be in that area, is like I had to jump through hoop A B C Q T Y. Why do you get a shot right away? Why don't you have to prove yourself like I had to prove myself? Now, granted, I think Canelo got an early shot against Mayweather before he probably should have, but Canelo has actually went and done what he should have done, I guess. And the same with Spence. I had to fight Porter. I had to fight this. I had to fight that. And now you're going to come along and go, I want a shot at the title. But those guys are still out there that I had to go through. Why don't you have to go through
them? No, you guys are right. He's definitely got a valid point, Errol Spence. He's not wrong in what he's saying. He is the top dog. He wants the money. He wants 60-40. You know, then you ask yourself, look, okay, that's not the same thing, but, and I'm talking about Bud Crawford here. If I really want to fight him bad, I'll take the 40.
Sure.
Because I got something to prove, man. So I might not be happy about it, but I can bring that little annoyance into the ring with me and take it out on his head.
Right.
Right? To prove it. So that's one of the things that bothers me about Bud Crawford's response to, you know, it's got to be 50-50, because there's no way it's going to be 50-50 based on resumes. Even though Crawford, right, that eye test thing, he's definitely good. We know that. He might be the best fighter in the world.
Right.
You know, he's right there. But he hasn't fought some of the contenders, obviously, like Errol Spence has. He hasn't fought Danny. He hasn't fought Thurman. Well, he could fight Thurman. He should. How about fighting Keith Thurman? If Keith wants it anymore, that we don't know. But he would prove a lot if he fought Sean Porter, because as we know, as we say every week, Sean is a tough fight for anybody. And a name just popped in my head we're not hearing right now because nobody knows what he wants to do. That's Manny Pacquiao. Everybody wanted to fight him for a while. Now you're not even hearing him anymore. But yeah, if I was Crawford, I would be annoyed enough. I would hope to think, okay, look, in my private moments, I'd never admit this. He's got a point. He's got a point. If I want him, I got to beat somebody that is higher up in the rankings, that people will go, you know, not an ancient Kell Brook or somebody like that, somebody more like Porter. Mm-hmm. Maybe though he's thinking our favorite line again. I don't know if I want that smoke with Sean Porter. You know, I don't know if I want to go through that hell. Mm-hmm. I don't want to risk it. See, but boxing, and this is easy to say sitting in my kitchen. Boxing is all about risk. Yeah. It's all about risk and reward, right? So if you want the top guy, you're going to have to do something about it. And Aram, as much as he disrespected Crawford, I hated that a few weeks ago, I would hope that he could talk to him a little bit and go, look, we got Porter. We can fight him. We can fight him in 3 months.
We can get this done in a year and a half.
Let's do it.
Follow the path,
because
right?
Then you can fight Spence in the fall. Mm-hmm. It's perfect. So it's one of those no-brainers that looks like it to them. Somehow it seems like it takes a brain when it doesn't take a brain at all. It should happen. But back to what you said, Frank, yes, and I agree. Spence is the guy. He's calling the shots. People can get annoyed at him all they want. He earned it. He beat Danny Garcia. He beat Mikey Garcia. You know, he's the guy. He beat Kell Brook in London. Like I said, that's his most impressive victory to me. So he's the man. He's the man.
Well, and to misquote Ric Flair, if you want to beat the man, if you want to be the man, you've got to be the man.
Woo!
But the point of that is, because it's been misquoted, in order to be the man, to beat the man, you've got to beat the man that beat the man, or the man beat, or whatever you want to look at.
Man beat.
You can't walk over and go, I want to be the man. Let's go. You know, no, you've got to get to that level. And even though I think we have ceded that spot maybe there is something that Errol Spence has correct. And when I look at the eye test there, I see Bud Crawford as being, yeah, maybe pound for pound, maybe being one of the best fighters in the world. But I also see this. I see a guy with a frame that doesn't look like it should be 147 and beyond. It may not even should be 140 and beyond. So that's an important thing. Now, it doesn't mean he can't fight at that level, but when you look at the great welterweights that have moved up or the guys that have moved up from below that weight, you look at a De La Hoya, you look at a Mayweather, you look at a Sugar Ray Leonard, you look at even a Tommy Hearns. They had a frame, or Roberto Duran. They had a
Canelo.
frame that
Canelo too.
would yeah, Canelo, that would accommodate more weight, more size without diminishing in skill. I don't know, and this just popped in my head as the image of Crawford as you guys were talking. I don't know that 147 against the big boys, as we said about Mikey Garcia. Whoops, that you know that you shouldn't be there. Just
Yep.
because you just because you've cleaned out your division and all that, you've gone a step too far. Not saying that Crawford has, but let's let him prove it. And I'm backtracking what I've said in the last few months. Let's let him prove that you deserve to be 147 because maybe you don't. You know, we saw with Leo Santa Cruz just a few weeks ago. Oops, that's not where you know, that guy was a little bit too big for you, a little bit too robust for you. Maybe you should be back where you were. That's not what anyone wants to hear, I'm sure. But that's why we have weight classes. And we're adding weight classes, which that's another story entirely. But the concept of just because you're good at where you are doesn't mean you're going to be there at the next weight class. You know, we look at Lomachenko. We've said for years he's a great fighter, but he's chasing belts that maybe he shouldn't. You know, maybe it's just he's going to get to a point where he finds a guy at that weight that doesn't fall for what he does because it doesn't bother him. Now, of course, Charles, I'm going to say this. I said the same thing about Manny Pacquiao.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So of course I'm known to be wrong, so it's not a big deal. But to say Pacquiao was a natural welterweight,
No.
even
Yeah, Frank, and he
yeah,
did
he
run into
gets what
somebody.
was it the Mayorga?
I,
Did he freeze?
Was it the
Oh,
Mayorga fight? He went, yeah.
yeah.
Was it the Mayorga fight where he went? This is not going to go well, and he had to beat the snot out of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But when
Go
you
ahead,
look at
Charles.
that, right? I'm sorry. I think you're right to a point. I think Crawford is okay at 147. I do. I think he'll be fine. I think we're talking 154. It will be a major problem. I
Yeah.
think that's a big difference. 147. I think he's shown you that his hand speed, his ability to move. We haven't really seen him take a crazy punch yet. He hasn't been touched, hasn't really been
Right.
hurt. But I think he can handle it at 147. 154 kind of throws it different. I think the way he dominated 140, he just did it. I mean, he came through like a train and just went through the whole thing. I think most people are saying is that are asking this question is 147 has some legitimate individuals who have power, right? They fight
Right.
different styles. They push him to a limit. And we saw Crawford in a couple of fights. Kell Brook did it, kind of touched him up a little bit, right? Kind of touched him up and got to him. And most people are saying, some of them anyway, at 147, there is legitimate talent there that can give you maybe a little problem. And for you to just come in and just kind of go, oh, I'm going directly to the top. No, like you said, maybe Thurman doesn't want to fight him again. Okay, maybe Danny Garcia is an afterthought. Maybe doesn't want to do that. I get that. Yeah, I mean, in a way, he's kind of dodging the obstacles anyway, right? When you look at it, there's only maybe one real obstacle that they want to see him overcome. At least Spence does anyway, and that's probably Porter. Before it was just an afterthought. It was something you just throw out there casually because that'd be kind of cool. And we saw them fight, and Danny Garcia was in the mix till he got beat recently. But now Porter is legitimately the mandatory challenger for one of your belts, and it'd be a hell of a fight. It can be done, and if, like John said, you may not like the parameters of it, 40, 60 or whatever. You may not like the fact that you have to go, whatever, go fight another guy to get to the guy. But at the end of the day, that's boxing. And then you have an older promoter that is causing hell as well as known to raise hell, and also causing you strife because the way he was even talking about you, costing him money. So it just comes down to what you want.
Right.
There's a path. If he really wants it, as John said, he can get it. You just can't get it the way you want it. You want to come up and you want to be the champion. You want to fight Spence when you want to. That's not going to happen. So when you move up, you're going to have to watch it and you got to take your time. But I think Spence, one thing I like about Spence, love him or hate him or whatever you think he's backtracking or whatever, he literally came out after this accident and said, I have a plan. I might fight 1 or 2 more fights at welterweight, which means it could be Crawford. I beat Danny Garcia, might be Crawford. You want somebody else? I'm good with that too.
Pacquiao.
And Pacquiao. Right. Then after that, I want to fight Canelo at 160. That's a plan, and that's a grown man plan. It's like I'm not ducking anybody. I got 2 more fights. They're legit, top-notch guys, and I'm going for the real deal with Canelo. And I don't know what's going to happen in between that, but I think I'm going to win. And he's not waffling. Before it was always about whether or not Spence really wanted the Crawford fight. He said, that's not an issue. It's not an issue. So now the question is, Crawford, what do you want to do? How bad do you want it?
I'm not going to be here. Yeah, I'm not going to be here forever. If you want it, you better acquiesce to what I'm saying, right?
And what I love legitimately, the one thing I get to get off this is the factor that when Spence fought his last fight against Danny Garcia, and Crawford was in the stands, so he was watching. Spence said, "I would never go to his fight."
Right.
Why? I don't need to see. Unless I fight him, I don't need to be at your fight. I don't need to draw up no attention. You already know what it is. I would never go to your fight, but here you are, because that means you need me. I'm A, you B.
You need me more than
AKA Mr. TBE. You said all the time, I'm A, you B. Because if you're not the B side, why are you at my fight?
Yeah, well, okay. I heard that too, but that Terrence Crawford goes to a lot of fights, so that was that's his thing. He's a boxing fan too, so I thought that was funny when Errol Spence. If he never went to fights and then he went to his fight, okay, but he goes, hell, he was at a fight out in Fresno when I was there, Fresno. So he just goes. He likes to go to the fights. That's his thing. So I thought that was kind of funny that Errol Spence said that. But if the fact that maybe there's a plan, real quick, and then Frank, I see you ready to go here. Just if he if Spence wanted to tell Crawford what to do, he could do this. He'd go, look, you're talking blah blah blah. Here's what you do. You fight Sean Porter. You beat him, then we'll talk. Other than that, I'm moving on, man. Then it's all up to Crawford. I mean, it's all up to him. He's got to either say, okay, I'll fight Sean Porter, or I'm moving on too. And that's basically what they said. Fine. Crawford said, fine, I don't care. And Spence is like, okay.
Well, you both brought up 2 points, and I should split them up, but I don't do that, so I'm not going to. The first point, I think we need to find a promoter or someone, even if on a smaller level, I don't really care, and get an answer to the question. The physics, the finances, the algorithm of putting on a fight. Because it sounds like, according to these guys, it's a lot more expensive than it is. Because if we're Crawford, for example, and we're getting 40%, and also it's an ego thing, I get that, but 40% of the take of this fight should be okay. It shouldn't be like you're going, well, we only got 40%, so we netted maybe about $25. It doesn't sound like 40% of this is going to be a bad thing. So maybe there's a little greed involved there. I don't know. Not necessarily on the fighter's part, but on the promoter's part. But the promoter would say, take the fight. We'll be okay financially. Now, part of that is I deserve half because I'm half of the draw. I get that. But if you're not the champ and you're not dictating terms, take what they give you. That's just my take on that. The second thing is because Errol Spence is saying what he's saying and saying, Crawford, you've got to jump through the same hoops I did. And in another couple of fights, I'm moving up to 160 or 154 or wherever I'm going.
60.
Okay. Who are you going to fight? You're calling out Canelo, but isn't that kind of hypocritical? Shouldn't you fight Charlo? Shouldn't you fight these guys that aren't getting? I mean, now you're jumping into unknown waters. You're saying the same thing as Crawford. You're saying you have to prove your due. You have to prove who you are.
That's what Canelo would say to him, Frank. That's what Canelo would say.
Exactly.
He'd use his own words against him. Who have you fought?
Him, right. Yeah. So you think you deserve a shot at this? There are 3 other guys that haven't proven it. You have to beat them before you can get to me. You've got to go through a couple of Charlos, Andre, and a few other people, and then you still are in the same position they're in because they haven't proven it either. So you go fight Triple G, go fight this, go fight that, help bring Bart Hopkins out of retirement, whatever you got to do to prove that you deserve this shot. So is that worth moving up if it's the same logic being applied to where you're at now?
It's just money.
Yeah, money.
It's just money.
That.
See, Canelo could say the same thing. Like I just said, fight Porter. Right. Canelo could say, okay, Errol, you fight Triple G. He's a middleweight. You fight him. We'll see how you do. Then we'll see.
Yeah. And then you got 3 other guys that haven't proven their worth. Charles, what do you think about that theorem that I just came up with on the fly?
I mean, I see that because what Canelo has done and what he's accomplished, and he has a right to say that too. But it's like the same thing you mentioned about what Crawford probably saying to Spence. It's all words. It's all words.
Sure.
I mean, so you can say that, but the Canelo thing, he's the guy. They love him to death. He can do no wrong. A lot of people see that, so he has his choices. And if he goes to 168, cleans that out, goes to 175, people gonna say he's like one of the greatest of all time. But then at my point is like, dude, you had the better fights were another level, but you had it right because you are the guy. And the same thing with Spence. And I think with Spence, I mean, you're right. But my question is, as you mentioned about Andre and particularly with Charlo, what else is left for somebody like Charlo to do to fight Canelo? You can say Triple G. Triple G, from what we've seen, does not want that. He mentioned Andre. He doesn't want that. You can throw a couple other guys in there. But the older Charlo is like, you said fight this guy. I fought that guy. I beat that guy. How many more guys you gonna keep putting it out there? But as you said, the champion has the right. But to sit up and go like, okay, well, Spence can't come to the front of the class. I mean, I get that. I do. But then you can say same thing about Pacquiao. We could go through this all day long. Pacquiao got
all day long, right?
He started at when we first saw him where he was with Juan Manuel Marquez. And then he jumped all the way up. He fought fighting Oscar, stuff like that too. I think what it really comes down to is the money, as you said, the prestige of the fight, and what it means. I think Canelo, no matter what, you kind of looks at how it comes together. And if he think he can make a lot of money at 168, which he can because he's the guy, people don't really, some people, his fan base really doesn't care who the hell he fights, truthfully. They don't. They're going to come out. They're going to support him, pay-per-views, the whole 9. But is the fight legitimately worthwhile? I think the Errol Spence fight for him would be legitimately, but maybe he feels it's below him. Again, with Crawford and Spence, it's a legitimate fight. Everybody wants to see it. And the other one, I'm going to throw this out there and may not like it, but I'm going to keep it 100 with you. The other guy that swore he was the greatest of all time, that little dude at 147. When they said, "Oh, you fought Manny Pacquiao 5 years too late," he kept it 100. He says, when I first thought about fighting him years ago, it was like $5 million, 10, whatever it was, less than $100 million. 5 years later, I made 300 million.
Yeah.
You do the math.
Yeah.
You do the math.
I understand.
I made so much money. He says, I made so much money that Manny Pacquiao, after the fight, told me thank you. Because he never saw that kind of money in his life.
Yep.
So, you had to, granted, we all want what we want as outsiders, looking in. But at the end of the day, is what moves these gentlemen, what moves them, and what works for them. So as much as I might want to kind of throw some shade at Canelo, I can't be mad at him. Same way with Spence. When you're on the top, you got to make a call. I always said this real quick. With the heavyweight champions, guys get the championship, they run right back in there. You got 365 days before you have to defend your title. You've never been champion before? I would take 363 days before I even thought about fighting again. I'm serious. You got to work the circuit. Back in the day, David Letterman, you got to get all that. You got to get all your prestige, got to get all your money, because when you lose, it's a wrap. So why not take advantage of all you can while you champ? Because when it's gone, there's no guarantee there's another shot. But I understand all of the, the parameters and all of the intangibles involved.
Well, I'm just going to say thank you for killing my segue, because that's exactly where I was headed. We've known each other too long.
I did that last week.
Frank, sucks. Yeah.
We talk before the show, and that's why we do that on purpose.
What do you think he's going to say? And I'm going to steal his thunder.
Yeah,
okay.
We know what you're going to say, Frank.
Well, I'm not. It's not that I'm not predicting.
I got it right here, Frank. I got it right here, Frank. I knew you.
Oh, he's got the show notes.
Right
You're not supposed to go off the show notes. Okay, so speaking of which, though, we're looking in the heavyweight division where top dog is Tyson Fury. I don't think we're going to doubt that at all. Tyson Fury has got the pick of whatever he wants to do, even though not too long ago he wasn't top dog. He beats Klitschko, he has his meltdown, whatever you want to call it, and then he fights his way back. Now we have a pecking order that doesn't seem to be a pecking order. Okay, and we were talking about where are we going to go with Fury Wilder, Fury Joshua, what's this, what's that, who's going to get the next shot? And as Charles said, it doesn't look like Tyson Fury's in any particular hurry to say, I'm ready to jump in here and mess with somebody that I have to, other than what's mandatory and what's been already scheduled. But we have a couple other guys there that think they have a spot or should have a shot. We just had we were talking about Ortiz again. Where and we know no one wants to really fight Ortiz. We understand why no one wants to fight Ortiz. But when we get into the pecking order of things, isn't that your proving ground? Isn't that where you go to say, okay, if I can't get a fight with Dillian White, I can't get a fight with Joshua, I can't get a fight here, I can't get a fight there, let's go back and see if we can take care of Ortiz, or if Andrew Ruiz comes back in the mix or something. Mm-hmm. Where do we go there, Charles? What's the skinny on someone looking at Ortiz to do something?
Yeah, well, the only fights that you really have seen him put down or really destroyed was with
Wilder.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only one you saw with the two fights there with Wilder. So if you really want to prove yourself, aka Mr. Dillian White, right? why wouldn't you get in the ring with him?
I know why you wouldn't get in the ring, but that's another story.
Right. But I'm just saying, if you put that way, you can prove yourself because nobody else wants that.
Right.
The other one I would look at is, and I know it's not going to happen because they both don't want to take the risk, is Ortiz versus Ruiz. I think that'd be a dynamite fight. It would be. I think that'd be a dynamite fight. Just like, okay, whoever wins that one, they need to fight them because now that these other guys are coming up, You know that Joshua is now locked in with with Fury. He's locked in. He doesn't want to see anything. If you want to see that, then now it's up to Wilder to decide which way does he want to go. So he's kind of like the odd man out unless he's able to get through the courts or whatnot. But overall, yeah, those are the fights we want to see: Ruiz and Ortiz and whoever else. It's like anything below the top four. Hey, let's take get some dice and shake them up. And let's match them up. And again, it really comes back to the point of setting these guys up on undercards, like we said, so you get some
Right.
full matches and bring the people back. Because there might be a point where if the fans are not coming back, I don't want to throw another sport in there. It might be like what March Madness might be. March Madness might be all straight pay-per-view, and people are gonna tune in. So gives people something worthwhile to watch.
John, I just can imagine Ruiz Ortiz in like a 5-foot ring, 2-minute rounds. It's just like boom, 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 ding, boom, boom, boom. That's all it would be. But he makes a good point that we have to see who we can see when we can see them, because we're looking at Tyson Fury is how many fights did Tyson Fury say he's got left in him?
3 or 4 tops.
3 or 4 tops, right? Deontay Wilder's how old?
35.
Anthony Joshua is
32.
okay. Heavyweights usually are gone when they're gone. It's not like you can get out there and go. I can hang around. Once you're done, you're done. Because if you can't get out of the way of another heavyweight punch, that's it. You may be able to stick around because you've got power, but if you can't get out of the way of power, that's a whole other thing. At least that's my take on it. So if we're looking at these top 3 guys that we're talking about, maybe not having a lot going on, we don't have a lot of time to play around with here, do we?
Heavyweights, right. Depends on what way they fight. I mean, I think Fury, since he's not a big puncher, he could probably fight longer as long as he's not getting hit with punches. And I think Josh was 31, by the way, so I don't get letters from our haters that I was wrong. I think he's 31. These are good comments, because I was listening to Charles, and the guy, I got to say this, the guy that made the most of his moments, his 15 minutes, was Andy Ruiz. He's talking about hit all the shows. He did everything. He did commercials.
Exactly,
He went to town. He bought a mansion. He had a big party with a bunch of Playboy models. He lived the dream. So I thought that was funny. People were criticizing him. I thought, look, he doesn't know. This could be his one shot. So let him have fun. Who cares? Right? And he did it. But the frustrating part about it, Charles, is that the heavyweights, it's just there's Frank, he's back. It's that limited handful that we talk about all the time. I got to say this, I told you guys off the air that when Dillian White threw out all these challenges, Luis Ortiz was one of the names, and Ortiz said, yeah, okay, I'll fight Dillian White. And as I said, we haven't heard nothing from Dillian White. So I thought that was funny. I just think that's funny. Yeah, that's like, okay, I'll call you. It's like, meet me at the school, and the guy didn't show up. Oh. I think Eddie Hearn probably, pure speculation. Eddie Hearn went, whoa.
You don't want
Luis Ortiz, he's not Povetkin. You were beating up Povetkin. He probably tells him, look, you got caught with a lucky punch. You knocked Povetkin down twice. You were beating the crap out of him. He caught you with a lucky punch. Luis Ortiz, even though he's as old as I am, he's like 62. He's that word. Got to always use these words. He's craftier than Povetkin. Got to use that word. So he would probably be in some ways even scarier for Dillian White, especially after just getting knocked out. That's the thing. Luis Ortiz came back, knocked out a guy in 30 seconds with an elbow, I think. But whatever, that guy did not want to be in the ring. Did not want to be there with him. I don't know what happened there. but he's an intimidating dude. You know, he's a big Cuban, and he's 6'5", 250 pounds. Dillian White's a big guy too. But I just wonder why Dillian White didn't say, okay, let's schedule it. I think Eddie Hearn went, whoa, wait. We'll just wait until Povetkin's ready, and we'll fight him again. We'll go back to plan A. You know, forget Ortiz, and that's too bad. Ortiz has lost 2 fights, and he shouldn't have. That's the thing. If you look at it, get off this real fast. If you look at it logically, there was no way in the world Deontay Wilder should have beat him. He had Deontay staggering around, wobbling around in the first fight. He pretty much had him.
Right.
Let him off the hook. Then he wins all the rounds and gets caught with 1 punch. A guy who was so good as an amateur, that should have never happened. You know that bothers him every day of his life.
Right.
So, you know, go ahead. I would love that fight. Or Luis Ortiz and Andy Ruiz. That would also be good. But I think Dillian White and Luis Ortiz is really, because we're gonna be sitting there go, whoever lands first, then we'll find out. Because, you know, they've both been knocked out. So who can take it? Be like rock'em sock'em, you know?
Well, Charles, we use a word, a phrase, afraid of this guy. Is anyone really afraid of the guy? Not the way we see it, but the way they see it, especially the heavyweights. Is Andy Ruiz really afraid to fight somebody? Is Pulev afraid of the guy? Or is it we're looking at more of career preservation than actual physical preservation?
Yeah, no, I don't think
Or is there a guy out there that really is that scary?
No, I mean, there might be a guy that might be that scary, but I think when you are at that level as a professional, you've trained, you've been in amateur fights, you've been through all of the wars, right? And I don't think too many professionals are scared of anybody. Now, it might be against their better judgment. It shouldn't be, you know, as far as their health is concerned, it probably don't make a lot of sense for them to step into the ring. But I think a lot of the so-called fear is about career preservation. It is coming from their trainers. It is coming from their promoters, because they're trying to say, hey, you don't want to blow this. We got this opportunity. If you just be patient and wait, we're the next guy up, right? So right. I think that's how that is. But I think when you get in that ring like that, man, I mean, some people might say, we don't have a chance in hell. You're like, I think I have a puncher's chance. Guys are ready to go. But I think a lot of them, it comes down to the money and saying, hey, if I blow this, I'm not going to get this shot again. So I think it's more, to answer your question, it's more about career, preservation.
Well, it's kind of like what John keeps going back to Paulie Malignaggi. Like, I'm not knocking this guy out, but I'm not afraid to get in the ring with him. I can win a decision. I can pile up points. I'm that good at what I do. If I do what I do better than what he does, he's not going to hurt me.
Yeah, and you know what? I just thought of something too. See, as an example. See, but I have a theory that my friends that are boxers, if they see this, they might agree, some might not. Obviously, you have to be different to be a fighter, because you're getting punched. Right. You're getting hit in the face. I mean, we don't know what that's like. I sparred once in my life, big deal. Right. Got hit right in their snout, started bleeding, got annoyed, big mistake. But I wanted to experience it. That's once. I mean, this is what you do for a living, and then you get knocked out, and you keep doing it. We don't know what it's like, and I thought of Leo Santa Cruz, one of our faves. He got knocked out by Davis. He wants to fight him again. He got knocked out brutally. He said, I want a rematch. That's what I mean. You have to be a little bit different. Most people will go, oh, nope. I'm not even going to be in the same state with that guy. I mean, I don't want anything to do with that. I went to sleep. It was scary. But they have a different mentality. You do that for a living. I mean, if you ever hung around gyms and watched guys spar, I mean, sometimes there's sparring sessions, and sometimes it gets very competitive and very intense. And we're all competitive. We talked about that. So you can relate on the competitive level, but getting hit constantly, moving around. I mean, I told you, that sparring thing, 3 rounds, that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I was exhausted. Right. I was young, but I was exhausted. So that's why everyone has to have respect for what these guys do. And they don't work just a week and then have the fight. They work for months for the big fight to get ready. So Fear, the only guy that was really scary that we all remember, of course, that I think some guys were scared of him was Tyson.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Because he'd get in the ring and he'd be staring at you. He had no robe on, and he's just staring at you in the corner. And then when you remember, I remember Peter McNeely, and he's rocking, and Tyson's eyes are just falling.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, holy crap.
Yeah.
And Sonny Liston used to be able to give a stare that would scare guys. And Muhammad Ali said later, he said, did that stare? He goes, yeah, it scared me. Yeah, he gave him that prison look, that like Charles could do was doing before the show. I mean, I was shaking in my boots sitting over here. So, that can be very intimidating. Sometimes it's theatrics, sometimes it's legit. But these guys are a different level as people. You can argue how smart it is sometimes, but you got to be willing to put it on the line. And when you're heavyweight, because things can end with one punch so quickly. Again, I'll go all the way back. I kind of think that's why Dillian White hasn't said anything to Luis Ortiz, because he's like that line we love. Do I want that? That smoke might be kind of old.
Don't poke the bear, right?
Yeah, it might be a little old, but I don't know if I want to poke it, right? Because that guy knocked me out. I've been knocked out twice now. I want something maybe a little. I want a title shot. So he's also like 32. So there you go. Right back to what you said, Frank. They're all getting up there.
Well, Charles, okay. Now I'm going to combine two thoughts here, I think. What is it that we as boxing fans want to see? Something at you that has surprised the three of us in the last week. When we covered the Ron Lyle George Foreman fight, and for some reason in the last week and a half, the viewership of that has increased by 120%. So, is it because of the style of that fight, the names of the people? What is it about that kind of fight and that kind of action that people just go, I have to watch that? Or is it that's just an anomaly? Because we could also see a Pernell Whitaker fight or a Paulinagi fight or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can say that it's something that is a rare.
And no one heard any of that.
Yeah, part of it. Well, I'm gonna start with the one part you said, but about the Ron Lyle fight. It can be like a rare and unique occurrence, but then again, it was a hell of a fight because you're coming at it from the standpoint of these guys coming one after another. We knew who George Foreman was. A lot of people still don't know who Ron Lyle was. He was a very tough competitor.
Shame on them.
And you watch how it really was a guy that was like, no quit. I'm gonna fight you to the end. And we've seen the damage that Foreman has done over in the history, right, to other people, literally just destroying one of the few people that say he destroyed Joe Frazier. And that's not something that you hear. You don't hear that in boxing history. So for somebody else that you may not know to kind of combat and bang with him says a lot about that. And I think it might be a fight, or it might be considered what we call like a boxing gym that people were caught by surprise. Like I've always stated to you, and you know about this, the first time I ran into Manny Pacquiao, watching him fight versus Juan Manuel Marquez. I had no idea who he was. And I'm like, the hell is these little dudes?
Little dudes.
And I'm looking, and I'm texting him, and all I could think of, and to this day, I say his name the same way because once I got his name, I had to say his name 3 times. Pacquiao, Pacquiao, Pacquiao. I had to say it 3 times. Pacquiao, 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 because he was that entertaining. He was that impressive. So I think when you mentioned, I think when people see things or they get a whiff or something or catch on to something that they're not, that is a real surprise to them, they like it, they enjoy it, they share with their friends. And maybe we got lucky, but then luck is, I think, not as that great. I think more people just kind of catch into what we're doing. And I think we're gonna try to keep it up, man. It's the effort and trying to deliver the knowledge of some things that others are not doing. Is he still there with us, or is he frozen?
Okay. Now, see, I've faded in and out of this so many times that now you're doing my job because you just came up with the next segue. So I'm getting really sick of this, to tell you the truth.
I'm not doing your
The
job.
next question was, yes, you just said you just answered the question, at least posed the question that I was about ready to pose. So
On script.
where's the mute button for you? Okay,
See?
so the question, John, was about to be because of what he did during that fight, or actually at the beginning of that fight, the Pacquiao Marquez fight. He felt compelled during the fight to call it, you have to turn this on now and watch this. Shut up, turn on, watch, fight, bye. And that's what we do now. And this is what he said. That's what is compelling about the sport. We want to share that with people, not just sports fans or not just what we are compelled to share good fights and the idea of fights with other people. And that's what we do. But it's not just us, it's other people. So the question was going to be what makes us do that, but he already answered that. So, but the idea of we get to this, what makes boxing different? That I know. What makes boxing different for those that are tuning in here just casually? What makes boxing different that we have to do this? That we have to say, hey, and not just us. Did you see blah 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 blah? You have to watch so and so such and such. You can get the ESPN Red Zone and watch the only scores for a football game. You can watch Sports Center and see the highlights of a baseball game. Home run, home run, home run, error, home run. You can get the entire game from that. You can watch them hit. He hit 4 threes. He hit the foul shot at the end of the game to win the game in a basketball game. And unfortunately, the way they play basketball, I won't get into that. That's about all you really need to see anymore. But you can't watch a fight just by watching the highlights. I mean, you can, but you don't get the essence of what happened. Because so much got to the point of, and especially in the decision, you can't tell me how they came to a decision if you're going to show me 2 rounds or 12 seconds of 2 rounds. You have to, what is that about boxing? You have to watch the fight and we have to share that with people?
Yeah, and talking about that moment where you guys were talking, you gotta watch his fight. You gotta watch his fight. That fight epitomized what boxing in that particular level is. You got 2, like we said, 2 little tiny dudes, and they're just tearing at each other, and you loving it, and it looks like it's over. Nope. So that is everything wrapped up in what boxing, and it's an ultimate individual sport, obviously. So you have it where a guy looks like he's done, and then that what we love about boxing is, as I was saying earlier, is the guts. And so he gets up and he starts rallying. It's like anything in any kind of sports, though, in a sense where you want to share. We're like, hey, my team was down 30 points. It's the 4th quarter. We're only down by 4. You got to put it on, So we love that. But I think boxing takes another level because of the individuality of it. And then if you know something about, in this case, you guys didn't know a lot about, I'm assuming not that much about him. If you do, like me, I've been a boxing fan all my life, so I know a little of the background. So a lot of times I'll be watching a fight trying to be impartial, but I'll know that a guy came from nothing and this was his dream or whatever. So on part of me will be pulling for him to win, and it'll be another, you got to see this. And then, like I said, that's one part. And then another thing where you got Hearns and Hagler, and you got Leonard and Hearns and Ali and Frazier. It's just because these are the best fighters, and you want to see what's going to happen. I mean, it goes back to the 1800s. You put the best fighters in the ring, people are want to see it, and they're going to want to share it. So it's basically, I think boxing has levels as far as fans and why we all like it. Doesn't have that anymore, unfortunately, but it did at one point. So I think that's why that happens is I'm trying to think. Well, Hearns and Hagler, I didn't call anybody, but my dad and I were watching in the living room, and we were screaming. If there had been somebody I would known, I would have called and said, put it on, put it on, put it on. You can see this. Come over to my house. Come over to my house. So it brings that kind of excitement out in people.
Well, as I mentioned last week, your homework for people was to go watch the Bobby Chaz Prince Charles Williams fight. Now, for those that don't know, I'm Prince Charles from my hometown, and he graduated from high school, rival high school, like 5 years before I did. But he wasn't known until he got to that point. Even in the schools, even in the city, it's like, I've heard of this guy. Yeah, he lived right down the street. But you watch that fight, and this is the thing about boxing, I think, that supersedes other sports. You can handicap a basketball game, and you can be right or wrong, but it usually doesn't have that oh my goodness moment or thing. You don't know when you're going to get that great fight or not. John, you talk about Gotti Ward. You don't know that that's going to happen. You're hoping for a good fight. You're hoping for a good outcome, but then you go, "Whoa, what happened here?" Ivan Robinson and Gotti is another example who was fight of the year. You don't predict that as being fight of the year before the fight, and you just don't know what's going to happen in any fight. The Maloney fight that just happened.
Right.
You don't know that that's going to happen that way. It's a rematch. It's in the bubble. We talked around it, what could and should happen, and suddenly, it's a whole nother event. Wow. It's the thing of you just, this is for those of you that have lasted an hour here listening to us ramble, thank you. But understanding that this is why we talk about this as fervently, as passionately we do, because you get a fight you don't know. Charles, if you recall, and it may not have been you, may have been our other friend, that we were at the state fair, the Ohio State Fair, and there were a bunch of little kids at the state fair boxing, and they were running around. How much you weigh? I'll fight you. I mean, it was really cool, but there were good matches between teenagers and younger at the state fair fighting, because it just ended up being that's mano a mano. So, Charles, you're better at putting this into a capsule than I am. Encapsulate what about it that gets you going. This is why I'm still enjoying boxing, or why I've enjoyed boxing in the past.
Well, I'll say that first of all, it takes a special individual to get into the ring, right? And if you know about boxing, you know the training that goes into it, and that's just the first step, the training. And then at that point, you have to have the mentality to step into the ring and then deliver off of the training that you had. And then, as you mentioned, you have no idea what's going to happen when you get into the ring. You think you have a plan, like they say, what's that favorite line? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So you don't know what's going to happen. But when you put all that together and you realize that this individual is spent all this time and into preparing, and then now they're trying to deliver on what they prepared for. That's like mano a mano. It's everything in your existence. It's like when you take a test, you study for the test, you go in there and you're like, damn, did I do well? And the only time you'll know unless you take the test, but it does not take away from the preparation. But I think the part of that makes it more exhilarating is realizing when you see they literally are delivering based on what they prepared for. And I think part of that too is when we talk about this, I know when I called you about the Pacquiao fight, when you're connected to it, if you're a sports writer, sports analyst, or something, and there's a favorite sport or you witness a sports moment, you want to share with others the opportunity to see greatness. And you want to say, hey, I'm calling you because you need to see this. This is what this sport is supposed to look like at its highest level, right? You don't want to wait until somebody else tells you about it, or you don't want to regret this opportunity to see greatness. You have the opportunity to see it now. Later on, you'll see it and you'll catch it. It won't have the same effect. So I think that's what we try to do now, is literally show people now these things that you're watching now, this is how it's supposed to be. Like when you talk about basketball, Final Four, when we say basketball games, was it 78, 79, Final Four, DePaul versus Indiana State, Larry Bird versus whoever. You got to watch this is the best. And this is why we're bringing it to you. Not just because, yeah, we're just some guys sitting around talking about boxing. Yeah, that's true. But we're trying to give you a perspective where the average fan goes, damn, I didn't notice that. I watched that fight. Or I'm looking for something that's going to pique my interest, right? And keep me like, oh man, these guys really have knowledge. It's not like we can sit back and go, yeah, well, he hit him and he hit him and blah, 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 blah. But really, we're trying to take it to another level. And I think that's why we do what we do and we're explaining in such a manner, because we want to share something we are passionate about and we enjoy watching ourselves. We want you to share the average fan in watching greatness.
So basically what you're saying is we are bigger than the sport. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I didn't say that. You said that.
That wasn't on the script, Frank. That was not.
That wasn't
on
on.
the
See,
script.
you didn't see that one coming, did you? No,
No,
but
I didn't say that.
But
So now, look, for the record, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Clear it up. Follow the damn notes.
I'm gonna tweet. I'm gonna tweet that out. Ice Water said we are bigger than boxing. No, but okay, but seriously though, John, that is kind of what it comes down to. You know, we're to the point where not just we in general, with social media and whatnot, we want to share our experiences with other people. That's the way society is now. Whether it's good, bad, right, or wrong. But in this situation, it's a good thing because we can share, we being us, we can share things that motivate, that we get. This is pretty cool. And again, when we look at some of the fights we've covered and some of the fights that we're previewing, those kind of things, I think it's a okay. So there was a question there someplace that apparently didn't go through.
Yeah.
But the idea being that I'll splice it together so it looks nice. But the idea being that what we do is we enjoy what we're seeing. And it's not that we're saying you have to watch this or this upcoming fight you have to view or you have to go back and watch this. But for example, an old friend of mine asked me about white chocolate. Ooh, I know a little bit, but I don't know enough that I can give you a good comment on that. But now you've made me curious that I have to go watch. Nikita, and I'm going to forget his last name, Abba something or other.
I've seen him fight.
Yeah. And you go, okay, well, look. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. Maybe it's something we need to see, maybe it's not. But now we've got another person in a group to talk about or to look at. And it's never a bad thing to go, an up-and-coming fighter, let's check him out. So I think what I'm trying to ask you is it better or worse that we have this forum, not just this forum, but the social media in general, to get more people involved and maybe people turn us on to stuff that we don't know about?
Yeah, it's great. And I hope, and this is based on my life with people that didn't even really like boxing, and then our own excitement about talking about it, hopefully will make people that watch this go, oh, I kind of want to, what are these guys talking about? God, they're so passionate, they're so excited. I got to see this. And that's where it is. And that's the other thing too. You said about white chocolate, and we weren't talking about Jason Williams, were we? We were talking about the boxer white chocolate. So
exactly. That's what I said. Huh?
Yeah, Jason, is he fighting now? But yeah, so that's good. That brings the curiosity. That will add more knowledge to you, Frank, because you're a curious person. You'll go, oh, he's asking me about this guy. Maybe I need to watch some tape of him or something, or whatever. And then you can share how you feel about it, and then somebody else. And that's usually how you build an audience or build a fan base. Is people you use yourself as a springboard. I've done that with friends, women friends in my life who find out that I'm a big boxing guy, and they're like, boxing, but they will admit to me in moments of weakness, I think, that, well, I made it more interesting for them because I talked about it and I talked about the fight, and they, well, you know what? And I think that's what happens here. Is my point, is that us talking like we are, since we love it, people will most likely, hopefully, a few, a handful, whatever, will go, wow, you know, I got to check out what these guys are talking about, you know. And I think that's what that's all about. When you share something that you love, is that you present it in a way where you can't even help yourself. You're going to be passionate. And like you guys, when you talk about basketball, I mean, you guys make me start thinking about, you know, 1980s and 1990s and all these. Oh yeah, I remember that. That's really cool. So I think that's just the human contact thing where you get people thinking, going, yeah, I got to see this.
Well, Charles, shout out to John Merschbach. That's who made me think of that. So, but that's the idea of where do we go? What's coming up? What do we need? What do we need to have happen? Let's kind of close it at that. We're we're starting a new year. What do we need to see? Not just what we need to view, but what we need to see as far as fans. What does boxing need to bring to us?
John, you first.
I think it was you, yeah. I think it's you,
I
Charles.
mumbled through it.
Okay. No, I mean, first of all, of course, we want to see competitive fights, right? We're talking about this earlier. We've been waiting for some top-notch fights to happen. We would love to see. I'm just saying, I think people want to see. You saw Gervonta Davis, what he did, right, to live Santa Cruz. Want to see him directly in there, perhaps with a Devin Haney. Let's get it. You know what I'm saying? I'm throwing that out there because he's talking about Devin Haney wants the opportunity to show that he's worthwhile. You're trying to hold him back, his management. So I think he wants to fight. I think Gervonta Davis would love to see that. You can see that too. Shakur Stevenson in with a little bit more top-notch talent. He had opportunities to possibly fight for 2 titles. I think he's a guy we need to watch. Teofimo Lopez, you know, he's the guy now. So he was able to take the big man down, and now it's like let's see him in the fight as well. One other guy I'm gonna throw out there, just because we've been waiting a long time, and I could go other ways too, and I'm gonna lead the welterweights and stuff to John, but I want to see Gary Russell Jr. fight.
I felt that. Yeah, it's coming.
I want to see Gary Russell Jr. get into the ring against.
That was on my script.
Right. Get somebody right. I want to see him fight somebody legitimately within the next 6 months.
And 7 years?
Well, yeah. The next 6 months, so we can legitimately clear the slate. Either he's going to be participating or not. Other than that, there's so much at 130, 135, 140. I'm going to lead the rest of you guys. But those are the guys I want to see in the mix very, very definitely in the new year, 2021.
Okay, John?
Well, I'm one of your favorite guys, Charles, is going to fight Estrada. You know, Chocolatito is going to fight Estrada in March, so I'm really looking forward to that one. We need good fights. You know, you get tired. Every show we talk about, when is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? They got to have Fury and Joshua fight in 2021, I think. That's got to happen. That'll be a big, obviously a big interest because Fury doesn't need a promoter. He's already a walking promoter himself. That'll bring the interest up. And then keep doing it. The young guys that Charles just mentioned, the lightweights, 135, they're dynamite. And so is 140. You know, you got the Rougarou, you got Ramirez, you got Taylor, and then they could all move up to 140 at some time, and they're all there. And then those guys might move up to 147. So that weight group is phenomenal. We're talking about talented youngsters here. Boots Enos, don't forget him at 135. He's really good. Devin Haney, of course, Ryan Garcia. He's got his big test coming up here against Luke Campbell. He wants to fight everybody. I think Teofimo's going to outgrow the division soon. He might have one more fight at 135, maybe two, depending on. But he wants to move up to 140 soon. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens in 2021. And then the older guys. You know, I have to throw this in because it's on my mind since I just wrote about it. Lomachenko is hopefully going to find some judges that won't be bribed, like he said, and there won't be any bias. There won't be any bias against him. But it's going to be, on all seriousness, it's going to be interesting to see what he does in 2021. How does he get his mojo back? You know, how does he Where does he go from here? Is he going to stay at 135? Those young guys are really nipping at his. They're more than nipping at his heels. They're coming up fast. So is he going to fight one of them? Fight Gary Russell Jr. in a rematch. You know, fight Davis. You got all kinds of options. So that weight, you know, from 130, Shakir 130, he's right there too. From 130 to 150, whatever. Fascinating. Canelo, well, you know who we want him to fight, but he's going to probably fight Billy Joe Saunders. That I just got a feeling that's going to be the next one. But there's a lot to look forward to, is what I'm saying. But I just hope that we have more than just the one biggie, you know, with Fury and Joshua, that there's some that I'm not thinking of that will happen, where we'll be sitting here a year from now going, man, that was a great 2021. We finally got past the pandemic, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, I think mine are more organizational than fights, though I will say a couple things. One, if Canelo still rules the roost, then we need a Cinco de Mayo fight. And not just a fight, we need the fight. Whatever the fight is going to be, it's going to have to be big and hyped. My organization, well, there's another thing that I don't want to see that can happen off in the wings. I don't want to see Adrian Broner. And I hear talk about I'm better. If you're going to fight, go fight in Botswana, get your stuff together, and come back and show it. I don't want to see an Adrian Broner fight on TV. Sorry, because I've been sucked into that too many times now. No offense to Adrian Broner. I'm sure he's trying to turn the corner and all that, but I don't want to watch an Adrian Broner fight and go, nope, same old thing. He hasn't thrown a punch in 4 rounds. I don't want to see that. What I want to see is something that Charles has suggested several times. I want to see a tournament. I want to see somebody say, look, we have a perfect opportunity here because everyone is starting, and we said this a few months ago, still starting from basically ground zero. Let's everybody get into this. Let's organize it. And I'm not even sure what weight class is. I really don't care. But when there's so much that's jumbled up, and you can go lightweight, you can go middleweight, I don't really care. But there's so many spots where you can go, it's jumbled up, let's go out and do that. And then the organizational thing that I want to see is I want to see, especially when it's a pay-per-view card or whatever, I want to go back to the days of, you know, when HBO would do a fight. And you would say, these guys are fighting in the undercard, and we knew about who they were a month leading up. Not just the guys that are, you know, at the weigh-in. We want to know before they go into the fight. We want to be able to watch the undercard as well. Because right now, the undercard A is an after fight. It's usually not even on the same station as the big fight. You know, one fight's on pay-per-view, the undercard's over here. I don't quite grasp that. I think I understand what they're trying to do, but there's still no lead in to that. It's like, fights are on today. I want to know these guys. I want to be able to follow these guys leading up, the up close and personal stuff. Give me that story so when the fight happens, now I can go, that's that guy, and I'm going to follow him from there. Right now, it's just, you know, and I know we oversaturate the journalism. I get that. But give me an idea of what it is I'm about to see in another few months or a few weeks or whatever it is. And then when the fight date comes, I'm a little more invested in the entire card than just one fight. So I want to see Showtime, DAZN, somebody say, we're going to devote time to the undercard as well as the main event. Obviously, the main event you're going to devote more time to. I get that. But we're going to devote, again, as Charles has said a number of times, you guys need some PR? Come see me. Because this is kind of ridiculous where, again, someone mentioned a fighter, and I went, yeah, but I should, you know, if someone else knows about him, I should know about him too. So let's get these guys some exposure. Let's get them out there. Let's get boxing back to where it's must-see TV for 3, 4, 5 hours as opposed to what's on. Because I don't think it's ever going to get to the point where it was or get to the point where it could be unless invested in it. And I don't think right now we're allowed that. So,
yeah, let me say this real quick. I'm sorry, Frank. That's a great point. And the greatest example of that is you make them occasionally. He makes them occasionally, right? Right, Charles? No. Yeah, see, he agreed. And wasn't even on the script again. So a great example of that is the fight of the year. The Max Box, I'm going to divulge it right here. The Max Boxing fight of the year is Branchek and Zepeda, who was a 5-round war, 8 knockdowns. Who's talking about that fight? There was nothing about it. There was no background about it. Now, if you're into the sport, you knew most likely it was going to be a war. But you didn't expect it to be this kind of war with 8 knockdowns and almost a knockout of the year when Branchek went down. So that's an example of the promotion and stuff where you could have really built it up, and then you might have got an audience. But see, they don't want to invest that in boxing anymore, Frank. That's what it is. It has to be from websites like Max Boxing and The Ring and Fight News, Boxing Scene, all that. I could say the competitors. That's okay. It has to be them. It has to be all of us, because the written word, even though nobody likes to read anymore, that's where it gets out. And that's the sad part, is you write something you think is dynamite, and like 8 people read it, and they're all your family. That's kind of depressing. But they won't do that on TV anymore. They won't invest unless you're a champion. The other guys who could be champions, Branchek had a lesser title. They don't get the ink, and that's really troubling.
Well, the thing is, and Charles, I'll throw it back to you, but the thing that I think is odd is that they'll self-promote lingerie football. They'll self-promote lacrosse if it's being shown, the World Rugby Championships or whatever, the fight that they're going to fight, that they're going to show. Even if it's not a lot of stuff, you have something. Okay, coming up on Friday, we have blah 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 blah. Come check it out. And here's some stuff we've done on on Peacock or whatever. And there it is. Go take a look. They don't do that. So, and I know you're a big proponent of the reform of the tournament, Charles. What other, if that, or what other reform do we need?
Well, I mean, but the tournament speaks for itself because there's already rankings, right? The rankings are already set up. So they usually go 1 through, you might have different bodies that might go 1 through 10, 1 through 12, but you could start with the top 4. That's almost like they get a bye, right? Like anything else. And then after that, you just match them up with the numbers. And the point of it is you have guys really paying attention and really involved, wanting to win because they want to move up the ladder, right? That's the caveat. That's the little carrot that you're dangling in front of them. And then that means putting those fights on an undercard along with another major fight lets you understand that this is really for all the marbles is very important, because this means this is an opportunity for a next step for a boxer, right? You win this fight, your next step is more money, more exposure, more opportunity, and more fans, and which helps build your brand. And there's something about that when it comes to competitors, particularly in boxing. They want to be the guy. They want to be a cash cow. They want to make more money, want people to love them, and they want more opportunities. And because there's nothing like that. When you're a champion in boxing, particularly heavyweights and on, and people really love you, that it's nothing, there's nothing second to none like that, because it's all about you. But I think they should do that. Again, like I said, with that boxing tournament, line them up with the numbers, put those numbers and those fights on the undercard, push the heck out of them, let us know the stories, and go from there. Because what it does is it continues to add stability, it continues to add strength to boxing, and it actually makes for great fights. And that's what people at the end of the day in boxing, when they watch boxing, they truly want to be entertained by great talent.
And the simple thing is, as John mentioned, if the powers that be want to promote it, we will. It's that simple. If you don't want to promote it, we will. We'll talk to your boxers. We'll talk to your matchmakers. We'll talk to the referees. We'll talk to anybody. If you don't want to do it, we will. Here's what I look at. Now, okay, I was playing at a 6th grade basketball league when I was little, and we had a chance to play during halftime of a high school basketball game. Right, so you're on the stage, and I pulled down a rebound and went coast to coast left-handed, because it was 6th grade, no one else could do that, right? So between sixth grade and high school, people were waiting to see me play in high school. No, they weren't. I'm just making that up. But the idea being, if yeah, I know that nobody
Really?
knew who
Really,
was.
Frank?
Yeah, really. They waited 4 years to get me. Yeah, right. But no, but the idea being though, if you give us a taste, we'll stick around for the rest of it. If you give us something, we'll stick around for the rest of it. That's what I see. That's what boxing is missing. They have a chance to give someone an idea of what the behind the scenes stuff. Why are we so invested? Why are we into this? And they don't. And again, I don't know whether it's a money thing, whether they just don't want to invest the time. Like you said, Max Boxing, other people are more than willing to do that. Give us a chance.
Yeah, and you know what? As you guys were talking, I got an idea.
Oh.
What I will do before the shows is I will look ahead at the fights coming up. I will scan on BoxRec, give them a plug to the fights. I will look at the matchups. And if you want, we can talk about some of the fights that are on the undercard fights that nobody knows. We could talk about those fights. So at least get the word out a little bit. And then the next week we could ask, we could say, well, what happened in that fight? Well, didn't live up to what I thought. Or, man, this guy's really good. Does anybody know him? No. You know what I mean? So at least we could start the ball rolling a little bit since our audience is growing so much. Right, George and Ron Lyle?
Exponentially.
Right?
The word is
right.
exponentially.
So we can at least do what we're always talking about, which is give those guys in the undercard some PR. And hell, I'll look at some old contacts and see if we can find them on Facebook. Maybe we could get even one of them on the show one of these times to talk about their fights. Give them their due. Is I know what you're saying, and we can get ahead of the curve and do it on the show.
Okay. I'll throw one last thing in there.
Sure.
John, we need to find Richard Schaefer, man. We need Richard Schaefer on this damn program.
He's in Europe somewhere.
Well, that's why they got social media. We need to find Richard Schaefer. Richard Schaefer is the man. We get Richard Schaefer. We're gonna be at all the boxing stuff. We're gonna let people know what the hell is going on because he's a boxing mind that is second to none. Let's make that part of our task for 2021. We need to connect with Richard Schaefer.
Okay.
We'll talk.
Done. We'll do that.
We'll talk.
Okay, so we're looking at how we're going to reform things. What's coming up? Everybody John gives a little idea of where they're going to see the first year. We're still going to do a show, but just people may not catch us by the first year. So where can you be caught up with by the first by January 1st? Where are you going to be found?
I'm always hanging out at maxboxing.com, trying to create interesting articles, as I said, and then get controversial sometimes, not on purpose, but it does happen, like today with my Lomachenko article, where I've got people loving it, hating it, wanting to punch my lights out, which is great. But that's where we are. We got all our big ones coming. As I said, we got the upset of the year. We got the KO of the year. Just wrote that yesterday. We got the fight of the year, and then we got the fighter of the year. I wonder who that could be. So we got all that, and then we're going to go totally 1,000,000% like we always do, But I just got to say again, I love this because I've always tried as a writer to try to talk about some of the guys that people don't talk about, like Darnell Boone, for example, who we had on our show, who's fighting February 20th, who's going to be fighting again. Who is fighting? He's going to be on our show again. He already said today. Before that, those guys deserve their credit and they deserve their due because we talk about all the commitment, all that. They even do it at shorter times in their life where they only have a week to get ready. That's amazing. Right. So those guys deserve all the credit. I always try to specialize on that in Max Boxing, focus on that. But that's where I'm in, www.maxboxing.com. You'll see us. It's all, pictures and all kinds of stuff. Do our best.
Ice water?
You got jokes. Anyway, the Goon Squad Sports Radio Show. Goon Squad Sports Radio Show. You can check us out. We have a YouTube channel, Facebook as well, and Twitter. Also, therealityofsports.com. www.therealityofsports.com. Just trying to bring you something different. Might see some old nostalgic photos from my old time journalism career. Just trying to bring out some different measures for you to view and look at. And I think too, Frank, what I'm going to do, I have some vintage. I wouldn't say vintage. Vintage means too so old, but I'm going to bring out. I'm going to before the end of the year work on some of the older video footage of different things I've covered. Just kind of let you see what's going on there to kind of put it all together, wrap it up in a bow, and start to share that with people as well. So just trying to do something different, unique as we move forward along with this show. Always trying to create different and new and unique material for people to digest and invest in.
Well, the Ultimate Sports Network keeps growing. We're adding more people. We're adding more shows. We're getting all kinds of fun stuff on the air. It's been a lot. We've got a few more interesting ideas. Well, they're interesting to me. I don't know if anyone else finds them interesting, but interesting ideas for myself and the network. And then personally, starting the first of the year, I can be found on the Sports Crib. It's done on Facebook Live on Thursdays, 6 to 8 Pacific. It's an interesting show. It's kind of eclectic. We've got people from across the country. And if, in case you haven't heard me speak before, I know that's rare, I get to talk a lot. So that may or may not draw you in. I'm not sure. But it's more of me being like these guys instead of me being host Big Mouth. So uh, if you think I have opinions, well, guess what? I get to talk about them now. So, but it's fun. We have a good time there. And again, doing this has just been a blast. I wish everybody a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, and however else you want to put it. It's going to be, look, we're going to get through this year. We're going to start next year strong, and double nickels for everybody.